The stars were quiet as Earth's last hope blowed into the void. The great betrayal had already been sealed. Their cries echoed in the coldness of space as the coalition of galactic species erased centuries of human progress. With a single command, the fleets of Earth lay shattered in the stars, their ships torn apart as the alien armada swept through space. Humanity had been judged dangerous, primitive, incapable of understanding the greater workings of the galaxy. Their cries had fallen on deaf ears when they begged for mercy from the very races they had once sought to join. Instead, they were condemned to a desolate planet, forgotten by time on the edge of known space. Their home was lost, and their future seemed all but erased. In the dark bowels of a barely functioning vessel, Captain Eva Martell stared at the fractured communication screen, showing nothing but static. The faces of her fallen comrades blinked in and out as if the universe itself was mourning their lost struggle. Earth's once proud fleet lay in ruins somewhere in the void, scattered to the wind as the last remnants of humanity clung to life on an alien world, a cruel prison that stank of desolation and defeat. Captain Martell gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white as the memories of the battle replayed in her mind. The chaos, the fear, the overwhelming power of the coalition forces had been too much. She had watched as her friends and officers were torn apart by energy blasts. She had seen the destruction of Earth's capital cities, broadcast across the galaxy in real time. With no mercy to soften the blow, humanity was no longer wanted. They were a virus, a plague to be exiled at any cost. She closed her eyes, blocking out the memory. But even in darkness, it would not leave her. Her heart hammered in her chest as she clenched her fists, a fire of rage building inside her. This was not how it would end. They had been pushed to the brink, but they were not broken. The humans had survived worse. This was just another battle in a much larger war. "Captain," a voice called, breaking the silence of the darkened command center. It was Lieutenant Marco Alvarez, his face gaunt and eyes red from lack of sleep. "We've detected movement on the surface of the planet. There's something down there." Eva turned to him, her eyes narrowing despite the exhaustion and despair threatening to consume her. She couldn't ignore this. It could be the spark they needed. They couldn't stay passive forever. They had to act. "What is it, Marco?" "I don't know, Captain," Marco replied, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "But it's not like anything we've seen before, some kind of signal. I think it's trying to reach us." Eva stood up from her chair with a renewed sense of purpose, her heart still heavy with the weight of their loss. But now something else took its place, a flicker of hope. She wasn't sure what awaited them on that barren planet, but if there was even the slightest chance of survival, she would take it. "Prepare the team. We're going down there. We need answers." She couldn't afford to wait. They had been abandoned and forgotten, but humanity's fire still burned bright, and she would not let them die out, not today, not on her watch. The planet was a wasteland, dust and rocks scattered across barren plains, the air thin and unwelcoming. Yet to the humans, it had become their prison, their new home, a place of exile, where hope seemed a distant memory. But within the broken remnants of Earth's technology and scattered ruins lay secrets that could change everything. Beneath the surface of this forsaken world, something had been waiting. Captain Eva Martell and her team stood in the shadow of an ancient structure. It had been unearthed days before, buried beneath layers of sediment and time, an obelisk of some kind. Its shape, both alien and familiar at once, the dull gray surface hummed faintly as if alive. Its strange markings pulsed with an energy they couldn't understand. Eva's eyes glinted in the pale light of the distant sun, and her heart beat faster. There was something here, something that called to them. "What do we have here, Dr. Tanaka?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she surveyed the structure with awe. Dr. Hiro Tanaka adjusted his glasses, his face full of curiosity and excitement. "It's unlike anything we've encountered, Captain. It's older than any civilization. We've known, not just human, but even the galactic species, the coalition included." He paused, tapping the stone with a metal tool. "I believe it's a relic of an ancient race that predates them all, and I think it holds the key to what we need to survive." Eva's gaze sharpened. "Explain." "The technology embedded in this structure is remarkable," Tanaka said, his voice almost breathless. "It doesn't just rely on energy like we know. It doesn't use any known fuel sources. This thing works on some kind of bioelectric field, connected to the planetary core itself, and if my readings are correct, it could be harnessed to power entire fleets. We've never seen anything like this, Captain. This is far beyond what the Coalition ever imagined us capable of." Eva's mind raced. This could be the breakthrough. They had been waiting for a chance to level the playing field. But it wasn't just the technology that caught her attention. It was the implications. If this relic could do what Tanaka suggested, they might be able to power weapons defenses and ships beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. It was a weapon of the old gods, a force that could turn the tides of war. But it wasn't just the technology that worried her. There was something else lurking within the structure, something almost alive. She felt it before she saw it, a faint tremor under her feet, as if the planet itself had awakened. She spun around to see her crew looking at each other in confusion, then fear. The air around them seemed to thicken as if charged with static, and a deep hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. "Captain," Lieutenant Alvarez said, his voice tight with tension. "Something's happening. The energy readings are spiking. This could be dangerous. We need to leave now." "No," Eva's voice was firm and resolute. "We stay. We finish this. We're not leaving empty-handed, not again." She turned to Tanaka. "Can we unlock it?" Tanaka's hands shook as he worked furiously at the console embedded in the structure. "I'm not sure, Captain, but I'm trying." As the seconds passed, and the hum grew louder, the ground beneath them began to crack and shift. The planet was stirring, and they were at the heart of it. The ground trembled beneath their feet, as if the planet itself was warning them of the storm. They had just awakened. The ancient relic that had once been dormant now hummed with power, and the air around them crackled with energy. Eva could feel it deep in her bones, the pulse of something ancient, something alive. "Captain, we need to move now." Lieutenant Alvarez's voice was sharp with urgency, his eyes darting around the broken landscape, as if expecting something to emerge from the ground itself. Eva ignored him, her gaze fixed on Tanaka, as he continued to work feverishly at the console, his fingers flying over the controls, the hum growing louder with each passing second. She could see the sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled to decipher the ancient language etched into the structure. "Tanaka, how much longer?" she asked, her voice calm, but her mind racing. "I'm not sure, Captain." Tanaka's voice cracked as he looked up at her, his expression one of frustration and fear. "I've unlocked part of the system, but I need more time if I'm going to access the full power of this device. We can't leave until I've figured it out." The ground shifted again, and this time the rumble was followed by a deafening screech that echoed across the plains. It was a sound like nothing they had ever heard before, a sound that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. "What the hell was that?" Alvarez hissed, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm at his waist. Before Eva could respond, a flash of movement caught her eye. She turned just in time to see a shadow dart across the landscape in the distance, something fast, something alive, and it was heading toward them. "Get to the ship," Eva commanded, her voice low and steady. She turned to Tanaka. "We're leaving now." Tanaka hesitated for a moment, his fingers still pressed to the console. "Just a few more seconds, Captain. I'm almost there." But Eva could see the fear in his eyes, the growing sense of danger that they couldn't outrun. "No, Tanaka, we move now." She snapped. She didn't know what was coming, but she had no intention of being caught unprepared. The crew began to fall back toward the ship, moving quickly but cautiously, their weapons drawn as the tension in the air thickened, and the strange screeching sound grew louder. Suddenly, the ground erupted beneath them. A massive shape shot up from the earth, like a predator leaping from the shadows, a creature of nightmare towering over them, with long, spindly legs and glowing eyes that burned with malice. Its body was covered in thick scales that shimmered like metal, and its claws gleamed with a deadly edge. Eva's heart raced as she drew her weapon. She had never seen anything like it before. The creature was a perfect blend of alien and monstrous. It was both familiar and alien all at once, and its presence sent a chill through her spine. "Fire!" Eva shouted. The humans opened fire with everything they had, but the creature barely flinched. Its scales deflected their rounds, as if they were nothing more than raindrops striking a stone. "Damn it!" Alvarez cursed. "It's too strong." Eva knew they couldn't win in a head-on fight. They had to retreat. They had to find a way to escape. But as she looked around, she realized something worse was happening. There were more of them emerging from the ground all around them. She turned to her team. "We move now. Fall back to the ship. Go, go, go." As they ran back toward their ship, the creatures closed in behind them. Their screeches filling the air. The ground beneath their feet seemed to shift and crack, as if the planet itself was fighting back against their presence. The battle was just beginning, and Eva knew they had to survive long enough to learn what this planet truly held before it consumed them all. The humans ran for their lives, the creatures chasing them relentlessly, their claws scraping against the ground as they sprinted toward the ship, the tension thick in the air. With every step, Eva's heart pounded in her chest as her boots thudded against the rocky terrain, the sound of the creatures growing closer with each passing moment. They were fast, too fast. They would not survive if they didn't make it to the ship. Almost there, Alvarez called ahead, his voice strained with exertion. Eva glanced over her shoulder and saw the massive creature just behind them, its eyes burning with hunger, its mouth opening to reveal rows of sharp teeth. The others were closing in around them. She could feel the weight of their footsteps getting closer to the point of no return. "Go, go, go," she shouted as she pushed herself harder, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The ship's landing ramp was just ahead, the faint hum of its engines a beacon of hope in the dark. But as they neared the ramp, the ground trembled again. Another creature burst from the earth, right in front of them, blocking their path. Eva's pulse spiked. She could feel the creature's presence before she saw it, its massive form rising from the ground in a burst of dirt and stone, its eyes glowing like twin suns. It was bigger than the others, massive and covered in dark armored plates. It was the size of a small building, and as it roared its challenge, the humans froze for just a moment, paralyzed by its sheer size. "Move!" Eva barked and fired her weapon into the creature's face, but the shots only seemed to irritate it, its head jerking back, but not retreating. Alvarez raised his weapon and fired a volley of rounds into the creature's side, but again it barely flinched. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto them, and with a roar it lunged forward, its claws raking through the air. Eva spun around, grabbing Tanaka by the arm and pulling him toward the ship as the creature's claws came down mere inches from them. "Get in," she screamed. One by one, the humans leaped into the ship's airlock. As the ramp began to rise, the creature's claws slamming into the hull, but they didn't stop. They couldn't stop. They had to get away. With a final lurch, the ramp sealed shut, and the humans were safe for now. The ship's engines roared to life as they lifted off the ground, the dark planet below shrinking away as they soared into the sky. Eva stood at the ship's controls, her eyes locked on the readout as the ship blasted through the atmosphere, the crew catching their breath. But none of them could shake the feeling that they had just barely escaped death. "What the hell were those things?" Alvarez asked, his voice tight with disbelief. "I don't know," Eva said, her voice cold as she stared out the viewport at the distant stars. "But we've awakened something, and we need to understand what it is before it's too late." Tanaka stood nearby, looking pale and exhausted, but his eyes were wide with fascination. "That planet is more than just a prison, Captain. There's something ancient buried down there, something far beyond our understanding, something that the Coalition doesn't want us to find." Eva's mind raced, the creatures, the planet's strange energy. It all pointed to something far greater than they had realized, and now they were tangled in a web they didn't fully understand. "We need to gather more information," she said, her voice firm. "We go back to the planet, we find out what's really going on." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Eva knew this was their only choice if they were to survive and rebuild the broken empire of humanity. As the ship soared through the vastness of space, the hum of its engines, a constant reminder that their fight was far from over, the humans had escaped the horrors of the planet's surface for now, but the true challenge awaited them in the galaxy ahead. The Coalition would not let them go easily. They would come for them, and when they did, humanity would have to stand ready. Eva stood at the command center, her hands resting on the console. As the stars streaked past her mind, a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. Every move felt like a step into the unknown. They were no longer the helpless exiles they had been. They were survivors now, and every decision she made would shape the future of her people. "Captain, we've received a transmission." Alvarez's voice broke through her thoughts. He turned to her, his expression tense. Eva's gaze shifted to the screen where the faint outline of a transmission began to take shape. It was a garbled message difficult to decipher, but she could make out enough to understand its implications. The coalition was on the move, their fleets had been mobilized, and a full-scale assault was being planned. "They're coming," Alvarez said grimly. "It won't be long before they find us." "We knew this was coming," Eva replied, her voice steady as she met his gaze. "But now we have something they don't. We have knowledge and the will to fight back." Her words rang with a conviction that she hadn't felt in a long time. The fire that had sparked in her after Earth's fall was now a blazing inferno. They would not let the coalition crush them, not without a fight. "We need to rally every ship, every resource we can find," she continued, turning to Tanaka. "Get to work on that relic we uncovered. I want to know what it can do and how we can use it against them." Tanaka nodded, his face etched with determination. "I'll get to it right away, Captain, but we'll need more time. The energy readings are unpredictable. It's unlike anything we've ever dealt with before." "Then we'll make time," Eva said firmly. "We don't have the luxury of waiting." The crew set to work preparing for the coming conflict, their ship a hive of activity as they loaded weapons and scanned the nearby systems for any sign of the coalition fleet. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were human, and that counted for something. Days passed as they worked tirelessly to fortify their position, their ship's engines humming as they moved from system to system, gathering allies and supplies along the way. The Clith had come to their aid, offering their stealth technology to help the humans stay hidden while they built up their forces. The peaceful Gorans had also pledged their support, sending medical supplies and engineers to help with the rebuilding efforts. The humans knew that alliances like these would be the key to their survival and victory. If they were to stand a chance against the coalition, they would need every ally they could get. But even as their forces grew, the reality of war loomed over them. Like a dark cloud, their enemies were formidable, and they were relentless. The coalition would not rest until humanity was crushed. The first signs of the coming battle appeared when a coalition scout ship was detected on the outskirts of the system. The humans had no time to waste. They had to act fast before their enemies could call for reinforcements. "Prepare for battle," Eva ordered as the crew sprang into action, the tension palpable in the air. They were ready for what was coming, but no one knew if it would be enough. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The hum of the ship's engines echoed through the crew quarters as the humans prepared for their first confrontation with the coalition. Since their exile, Eva stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the stars outside the viewport. The ship had entered the deep outer rim of the galaxy, where the coalition hadn't ventured yet, but the scout ship they had detected was a warning. It wouldn't be long before the enemy would bring more ships and more firepower. The atmosphere in the ship was tense. The crew worked quickly, checking their weapons and systems. As they awaited orders, Eva felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. More than ever before, this was their first chance to show the galaxy they had not been broken by the exile. They would not roll over and die. They would fight. And they would win. "Captain, the scout ship is closing in," Alvarez called out, his voice tight with anxiety. "They've detected our presence." Eva nodded with determination. "Prepare for combat." Tanaka entered the command center with a concerned look on his face. "Captain, I finished the preliminary analysis of the relic's power source. We can harness some of its energy to boost our weapon systems, but it won't last long. I recommend we use it strategically to gain the upper hand, but we'll need to act fast." Eva thought for a moment, her mind racing with the possibilities. If they could use the ancient technology to boost their firepower, they might have a chance against the coalition ships. But there were risks. They didn't fully understand the relic's energy and its consequences. They could be playing with fire. "Do it," she said firmly. "Activate the power boost on the weapon systems. Give us everything we've got." The ship's systems hummed to life as Tanaka's hands flew across the controls, the ancient energy coursing through their weapons like lightning, charging them with unimaginable power. The lights in the ship flickered as the new energy surged through every circuit. "Captain, we're locked on," Alvarez reported, his voice steady, ready to fire on the scout ship. Eva took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she gripped the armrests of her chair. "Fire." A massive blast shot from the ship's cannons, the energy from the relic propelling it forward at lightning speed. The scout ship was caught completely off guard, its shields failing instantly, and the blast tearing through its hull. The enemy vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light. For a moment, there was silence, then the crew erupted into cheers and shouts of victory. They had done it. They had defeated the first coalition ship in their fight for survival. But Eva knew this was only the beginning. She could feel the weight of the battle to come pressing down on her shoulders. "Captain, another fleet is emerging from the nearby moon," Alvarez said, his voice tense with urgency. "It's the coalition's main force. They're coming for us." Eva's heart sank as the reality of the situation set in. The victory against the scout ship was a small one compared to what lay ahead. A full-scale coalition fleet was now heading directly for them. They were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage: they had a weapon unlike anything the coalition had ever faced. "Prepare for the fight of our lives," Eva said, her voice calm but filled with resolve. "Set course for the moon. We'll engage them head-on." She turned to her crew as the tension mounted. "This is our chance to show the galaxy who we are. We fight for survival. We fight for humanity. We will not back down." With that, she turned back to the viewport as the enemy fleet loomed closer. The future of humanity was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would fight until the very end. The ships of the coalition loomed ahead, a vast armada of warships and cruisers, ready to crush the humans beneath their might. Eva's ship was dwarfed by their sheer size, but the humans had something the coalition had not counted on: the fire of defiance that burned in their hearts, and the power of the relic now coursing through their weapons. The tension in the air was thick as the crew prepared for battle. The hum of the engines and the faint crackle of static from the comms were the only sounds that filled the room. Eva's mind was focused, her heart steady. She had led her people through the darkest days of their exile, and now they were ready to face their greatest challenge. "Captain, incoming fire from the coalition fleet." Alvarez's voice rang out, breaking the silence, his fingers flying over the controls as he tracked the enemy ships. "They're locking onto us." Eva's gaze was unflinching as she surveyed the battlefield. The enemy fleet was closing in, their weapons charging. She could see the energy signatures building up on the distant ships, and she knew they would not hesitate to destroy them if given the chance. "Deploy all shields," she ordered, her voice calm but filled with authority. "Get ready to fire on my command." The crew moved swiftly, their hands flying over the controls as they activated the ship's shields and weapons systems. The faint whine of the shield generators rising to life was a reassuring sound, but it wouldn't be enough to hold off the enemy for long. "Captain, we're being targeted," Tanaka said, his voice tight with concern. "The energy readings are spiking. They've locked onto our position." Eva's eyes flicked to the readouts as she analyzed the data, her mind working quickly. They were outnumbered and the coalition had superior firepower, but they had one thing: the enemy didn't have the element of surprise. "Fire now," she commanded. The ship's cannons erupted in a burst of energy, the relic's power amplifying their weapons as they unleashed a barrage of fire at the nearest coalition cruiser. The blast hit its shields with a deafening crack, the force sending shockwaves through space, but the cruiser held steady. "Damn it, their shields held," Alvarez growled as he tried to adjust their targeting. Eva's eyes never left the battle ahead. She could see the other coalition ships beginning to fire their own weapons. In retaliation, the sky was filled with beams of light and explosions. The stars themselves seemed to tremble under the weight of the conflict. "We need to take down their flagship," Eva said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "If we can take out their command ship, we can cripple their entire fleet." Alvarez nodded and adjusted their course, the ship maneuvering with precision as they darted between enemy fire. Their speed and agility their only advantage in the face of overwhelming odds. The flagship of the coalition was a massive ship towering over the other vessels, its weapons massive enough to obliterate entire cities in a single shot. Eva's eyes locked onto its gleaming hull. As they closed in, she knew that taking it down would be a long shot, but it was their only chance. "Get us closer to that flagship," Eva ordered. "Target their engines. I want them disabled." The ship darted forward under a hail of enemy fire, the crew working As one in a blur of motion, the relic-powered cannons fired again, and again, each shot landing with devastating precision. But the Coalition flagship was a fortress. Its shields were almost impenetrable. "Captain, they're returning fire," Tanaka shouted. "Their main guns are charging." Eva's heart raced, but she knew what they had to do. This was their fight, and they would see it through to the end. "Brace for impact," she commanded as they raced toward the heart of the storm. The final clash of steel and fire erupted in a storm of destruction. The flagship of the Coalition loomed ahead, its massive weapons charging, ready to unleash their fury on the human ship. Eva could see the energy readings on the console spiking. The enemy's main guns were moments away from firing. They had no time to waste. "Captain, the flagship is targeting us with everything it's got," Alvarez shouted, his voice tinged with fear, but also determination. "We won't survive another blast like that." Eva's jaw clenched as she steered the ship with all her strength, the controls responding to her every movement, the ship veering sharply to the side. To avoid the incoming fire, the crew worked like a well-oiled machine, their unity and resolve giving them strength even in the face of certain death. "We need to take out their engines now," Eva said through gritted teeth. "All cannons fire at their engine core." The ship's weapons fired in rapid succession, the blasts from the relic-empowered cannons shaking the very fabric of space as they tore through the enemy's defenses. But the Coalition flagship's shields held strong, the massive hull of the ship deflecting the energy beams with only minor damage visible on its surface. The Coalition flagship returned fire, a massive beam of energy lanced toward them, the ship's shields flaring with brilliance. Before they began to buckle under the force of the attack, the ship shuddered violently, and Eva's grip tightened on the controls as the ship groaned under the strain. "Shields are failing," Captain Tanaka called out. "We need to reinforce them, or we won't survive another hit." "Not yet," Eva said, her voice steady, as she made a split-second decision. "We've got one shot at this. We take out their engines now, and we cripple their fleet." Alvarez's eyes were wide with understanding. "You want us to take a direct hit? If we don't, their fleet will hunt us down and destroy us all," Eva said coldly. "Now fire at their engines full power." The ship's cannons unleashed their fury once again, a barrage of energy tearing through the air. As the relic's power surged through their systems, the blasts hammered into the Coalition flagship's engine core. With everything they had, the ship rocked under the pressure. But still, the flagship held firm. Then the unthinkable happened. One of the blasts found its mark. The engine core exploded in a violent burst of energy that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The entire flagship structure was ripped apart in a blinding flash of light. The resulting explosion was so massive that it consumed the entire ship in an instant. The remaining Coalition ships faltered as the flagship's destruction sent ripples through their fleet. Many of them hesitated, unsure of what to do in the wake of their command ship's fall. "Captain, we've done it," Alvarez said, his voice in disbelief. "The flagship is gone. Their fleet is in disarray." Eva stared out the viewport in silence. The reality of what had just happened sinking in. The battle was won, but at what cost? The Coalition fleet was retreating. But the war was far from over. Humanity had struck a blow that would echo across the stars, but they would need more than this single victory to secure their future. "We've just taken our first step toward reclaiming the galaxy," Eva said, her voice strong and resolute. "But this is only the beginning. We're going to show them that humanity is not to be underestimated. We will rise, and we will take our place in the stars." With that, the crew began to breathe a collective sigh of relief, the weight of the battle slowly lifting from their shoulders. But as Eva gazed out at the stars, she knew that the fight for humanity's future had only just begun.